second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It is called Sankhya Yoga. We find in this chapter that the sorrow of Arjuna, the dejection of Arjuna, which was presented at the end of the first chapter, is continued. And the real proper teaching of the Bhagavad Gita begins from this chapter. We find the role of Arjuna and Krishna changes. Before this, Krishna is the Sarathi. He is the charioteer of Arjuna. And Arjuna treats him also like a friend. But after this chapter, Arjuna becomes a disciple and he puts his philosophical doubts and he surrenders before Krishna. And Krishna takes on the role of a teacher now, a guru. We find that the emotional feelings of Arjuna, which were given in the last chapter, they become more philosophical now. He is able to focus his mind and put some questions to Krishna about the values that are in conflict, whether he should kill his teachers or whether he should renounce the battle and take up the life of a mendicant, a sannyasi. And at one point he abandons, he says, what is the use of heaven? What is the use of enjoying on this earth? So this also indicates a certain attitude which is necessary before we enter into wisdom teachings. We have relativistic values, worldly values on one side and spiritual values on the other. So in the Upanishads also we see, especially the Kathopanishad, in which there is a young seeker, young boy called Nachiketas. Nachiketas goes to Yamraj, god of death, to ask him the question about life and death and what happens to a person after he dies. And Yamraj offers him all the pleasures of this earth, all the powers of this earth, all the wealth, the land. But Nachiketas says, I do not want any of these transient things, these relativistic things, these things which will one day perish, which will one day be lost, which will one day transform. Give me that knowledge of what happens to us after we die, that imperishable knowledge. So here too we see Arjuna gets into this kind of a mood where he is abandoning. He says, I don't want anything of this earth. I don't want kingship. I don't want my kingdom. I don't want victory. All these values which are so precious and so dear to a Kshatriya, to a warrior, to fight in a battle, to get victory, to reign over a kingdom, and to gain honor. All these are being abandoned by Arjuna. And he says, I have no use for this. So this indicates, it's a symbolic indication of the kind of attitude that comes to a person when a person is turning towards wisdom. A vairagya comes, a detachment comes, an indifference comes to the values of the world. Normally, power, position, wealth, these are social values, worldly values which people aspire for. But none of these values are sought for by a seeker of wisdom. When a person wants to know the higher truths, wants to know the supreme realities, then these pursuits become meaningless. You are looking for something else now. And that similarly in the Upanishads and in the Gita, you find that we have the case of Arjuna spurning, turning away from the worldly values. And he surrenders to Krishna. And then Krishna begins his teaching. Now Krishna does not sympathize with Arjuna. Krishna, on the contrary, scolds Arjuna. He gives him stinging blows, and the teaching enters straight into the heart of the matter. There is no beating about the bush. There is no hints. Straight away he enters into the very crux of the situation by telling Arjuna that he is grieving for those for whom he should not grieve. He is confused about what is eternal and what is transitory. He is thinking of himself as an agent. He thinks he is responsible for things that he is not responsible. So this confusion of values, from that confusion, Krishna corrects him, draws him out, first of all. Now when we say Sankhya Yoga, Sankhya is a rationalist system. Now in India we have many ways of thinking. There were many periods in the history of Indian thought, and many different schools of thinking have come up. So we have the Vedic way of life, in which we perform sacrifices to the gods, please the gods, so that the gods may bestow their favors on us and we may progress. The Vedic way of life. Then there is the rationalist way of life, the rationalistic thinkers like the Sankhyans, who explain with the help of reasoning, with the help of pure knowledge, they explain how this world comes into existence. The questions are eternal. Even today we ask the same questions. How did this world come into existence? Who are we? Where are we heading for? These are eternal questions. So the Sankhyan philosophies, or the Darshana Shastra, just like there is the Vedic way of life, there is also the Shad Darshanas, the 6 classical darshanas. Then we have the Puranic period, when the Puranic lore and the Puranic kathas, they became prominent in people's lives, the Vaishnava cult. And then there are the Shaktas, those who believe in the Devi. There are the Shaivites who believe in Shiva. There are the Vaishnavites who believe in Vishnu. So we have a very varied tapestry of Indian culture. And the Bhagavad Gita is the most wonderful book because it takes the essential teachings of all these different systems and binds them together, knits them together, or braids them together into one comprehensive vision and presents it as a philosophy of life, which is the Gita's own presentation. So when we talk of Sankhya, Sankhya is an original darshana of a rishi called Kapila. Kapila Muni, who lived many thousands of years ago, he made the Sankhya system, systematized the Sankhya way of philosophy, the Sankhya darshana, in which he explained how this world has come into being with the help of Sankhyas, categories, starting with Avyakta, the unmanifested, Purusha, Prakriti, 3 gunas. These are all ideas which were put forward by the Sankhyan thinkers, and they were adopted by the later schools of thought. As the thoughts developed, as the thoughts matured, they adapted, they took the Sankhyan ideas and used them. So the 3 gunas that we speak of, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, which all other schools have accepted, was a Sankhyan contribution. When we talk of nature, Prakriti, it is made up of 3 gunas, 3 modalities, called the Sattvic mode, Rajasic mode and the Tamasic mode. So here the Sankhya that is presented is not exactly like the Sankhya of Kapila Muni, but it refers to the rationalist way of thinking, using his or her reasoning power. When a person begins to differentiate, begins to think, then you say it's a Sankhyan, a rationalist system. So here Sankhya is used to refer to the rationalist way of thinking. We have again Sanjaya Uvacha Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidantamidam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudanaha. Ashrupurna Kulekshanam means the eyes filled with tears. Arjuna is tearful. To one whose eyes are filled with tears, Madhusudana, that is Krishna. Krishna said these words. Kutastva kashmalam idam vishame samupasthitam anaryajustam aswargyam akirtirkaram Arjuna. So he scolds him. He says, from where did this faint-heartedness come to you? This difficulty come to you? Vishama means a difficulty, an obstacle. How did this dejection come to you? Anaryajustam, it is not worthy of Aryans. Anarya. Aswargyam means it will bar you from heaven. Swarga. Swarga is the goal of Vedic life. Aswargyam means it will bar you from heaven, because it is the duty of a Kshatriya to fight his battle, and to die on the battlefield is the most reputable thing to do. Akirtirkaram. Akirti means that which will bring you disrepute. Kirti means fame, good reputation. Akirti means lose your reputation. Arjuna is famous all over. If we read the Mahabharata, one after the other we see the exploits of Arjuna. He has a great reputation as an archer, as a fighter. And if he does not fight in this battle, he will lose his kirti, his reputation will be lost. Klaibyam smagamaha partha. And now he gives him an even more stronger scolding by calling him Klaibyam. Klaibyam means important. Do not give yourself to importance. Na upapadyate, it is not fitting. Cast off. Shudram hriday daurbalyam. This Shudra hriday, this faint-heartedness, this weak-heartedness that you have. Daurbalyam. Bala means strength, vigor. Daurbalya means you have no balam, you are weak. Cast off this faint-heartedness and utishtaha. Utishta means arise, stand up. You must remember that Arjuna has cast away his bow and arrow and he is seated. So for him, to such a person who is seated with his eyes filled with tears, who is in a state of dejection, the Lord says, cast off this faint-heartedness. Stand up, O Parantapa. But Arjuna, instead of listening, starts justifying himself further. He defends himself. He says, Katham bhishma maham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana ishubhihi pratiyotsyami puja harva risudana. He says, how can I destroy, how can I encounter with arrows in battle Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of worship, O slayer of foes? So he says, yes, but how can I face Bhishma and Drona, who are puja harva risudana? They are worthy of puja. I should do puja to them. I should worship them. Bhishma Pitamaha, who is the patriarch of the family of the Kurus, he is responsible for continuing the Kuru clan. He has protected them. He has raised them. He has nurtured them. And Drona, who has taught him how to use the bow and arrow, who has been his teacher. How can I face them? How can I encounter these great people who are worthy of worship? Desisting from the killing of the Gurus who are highly honorable, it would be more meritorious in this world to have to eat of a beggar's pittance. Now, if we look at the technical part of the Gita, even the meter changes. All the shlokas in the Bhagavad Gita are made up of 8 syllables. 8, 8, 16 plus 16 is 32. And that is called Anushtup Chanda. But whenever we find Arjuna speaking of exaltation or in emotion when he speaks, then the meter changes from Anushtup to Trishtup. It changes into 4 sets of 11 syllables. So even here the same thing happens. Guruna hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaiksham api haloke hatva arthakamamstu guruni haiva bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradigdhan. So he says, hatva, only by detesting, by avoiding killing of these gurus who are highly honorable, it would be more meritorious in this world even to have to eat of a beggar's pittance. It is better that I become bhaiksham. Bhaiksham means a bhiksha, bhikshakari. It is better for me to become a bhikshakari rather than to kill these honorable, meritorious teachers, these gurus. Choosing, on the other hand, to kill these gurus as fortune seekers, I should be feasting even here on blood-stained benefits of life. And if I should kill them, then I will enjoy a blood-stained benefit. I want my conscience that I have got these benefits by shedding the blood of my gurus. Na chai etad vidmaha karatanna gariyo yadva jayema yadiva no jayeyuhu yan eva hatva na vijji visamaste avasthitaha pramukhe dhartarashtraha. So here now he gives his confusion. Neither is it clear which would be of greater advantage to us, that we win or that they win over us. Those very persons are standing ranged before us, the sons of Dhritarashtra, killing whom we would no longer wish to live. Struck down by the evil of a tender disposition, with a mind confounded in regard to what is right to do, I ask you, that which is definitely more meritorious, do indicate to me. I am your disciple, do discipline me, coming thus for refuge to you. So this is the final lowest point, the nadir of Arjuna, when he says, Karpanya dosho upahat svabhavaha prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. Dharma sammudha means where he is confounded about what is dharma. Dharma means that which is proper. Chetaha means in his mind has got confused about what he should do. So prichhami tvam, therefore I ask you, yat syat nishchitam shreha, you should tell me what is better for me, because I am your disciple. Aham tvam shishyaha, so he uses that word shishyaha. Shadi mam prapannam, I have come to you for refuge, do discipline me. I cannot visualize what could rid me of this distress which dries up the senses in this way, even should it transpire that I obtain unrivaled domain of the earth's plenty or overlordship of the gods in heaven too. He has abandoned, given up, taken refuge, and says that I do not know what can rid me of this distress. So that ego has to surrender. When the ego realizes it is unable, then you say the person is able, fit. As long as the ego is there, obstructing, how can a person take on the teachings? He cannot. He admits his own inability. And then you say the actual teaching begins with Sanjaya coming in between, having thus spoken to Rishikesha. Rishikesha is another name for Krishna, and Gudakesha is another name for Arjuna, the terror of the foe, saying, I will not fight to Govinda, lapsed finally into silence. So he makes his decision, I will not fight. On this, Rishikesha, with a semblance of smiling, O Dhritarashtra, spoke these words to him who was in grief between the two armies. So it is here that we find that the real teaching of the Gita begins. When Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, with Sri Krishna, he starts giving his teachings, the real teachings. Up to now we can consider that the anterior position of Arjuna has been given to us. Now here we have another point. Rishikesha is smiling. Both Arjuna and Krishna are in the battlefield. Both have got relatives and friends on both the armies facing each other. Yet Arjuna is lamenting, Arjuna is crying, and Krishna is smiling. This shows the two states of consciousness. Arjuna is looking at things from a relative point of view, from a human consciousness, from a limited state of consciousness. Krishna is seeing things from the past, the present and the future. He has got the cosmic consciousness. He is seeing the absolute, and therefore he is able to smile. Whereas Arjuna, because he does not have that vision, he sees only the temporal, he sees only what is before him, and that is why he is weeping. The Lord said, Asochayan anvasochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasumscha na anusochanti panditaha. He says, you are sorry for those for whom sorrow is unreasonable. First of all, he says that you are feeling sorry for Bhishma and Drona. There is no need for you to feel sorry for them. So the question arises, is the Lord asking Arjuna to be hard-hearted or unkind? That is not true, because both of these people are already meritorious. They have already gained merit. So that is one argument. The other argument is that, like when you stand in a queue and the queue is moving forward, there is a thrust going on. Similarly, events have brought them all to the battlefield. Now there is no turning back. They must go forward. So in both these cases, there is no use for Arjuna to feel sorry for Bhishma and Drona. You speak in terms of reason too, yet he is speaking as if he is a wise person. All the arguments that Arjuna gave were sensible, in the sense that they showed a sensitive person who had some care, who showed some respect. He is speaking like a wise person. But veritable scholars, that is Panditas, are not affected in regard to those whose breath has gone and those whose breath has not gone. Gatasun cha agatasun. That means there is a certain equanimity, a certain even-mindedness based on their knowledge and their maturity, that the wise people are not affected in regard to those whose breath has gone and those whose breath has not gone. Further, never was I non-existent, nor you, nor these chiefs of men, neither shall we, all of us, ever cease becoming hereafter. This is a cyclic existence, coming and going. This is not the first time we have come to this earth. So that is clearly mentioned here. Natva eva aham jatu nasam, natvam neme janadhipaha. It says further, never was I non-existent. Never was I non-existent, double negative. It means I was always existing. Nor you, nor these chiefs of men, neither shall we ever cease becoming hereafter. So we do not cease to become. Just because we die or we don't exist in one place, it doesn't mean we have ceased to exist. We have transformed. We have gone into another state. But we are still continuing. We will continue. And we have been in other states in the past too. Even if you look at it genetically, we are carrying chromosomes in us which were existing in another form, in our parents' parents. Like that, we can go back to so many generations. And in a spiritual sense, Hindus believe in reincarnation. So according to our guna karmas, we have had so many lifetimes. There is a scientist called Schrödinger. He has written a book, What is Life? In that he puts the question, when a calf is born, few minutes after it is born, it is able to stand on its feet and it can walk to the mother, it can find the udders and it can drink its milk. So Schrödinger asks the question, how did this calf know how to get up, how it should walk, where the milk is and how it should drink? So this shows that in the mind of the calf there was already a memory, an impression of a previous lifetime, of a previous form where it knew what it should do. So that is his argument. So similarly we say that we as human beings, we are all sojourning. We come here for a while and then we can return in a different form. According to how we have lived this lifetime, we will be born again to reap the fruits of our present day actions. All the good we have done and all the good we have not done, accordingly the next life will be fashioned. So he gives the same assurance to Arjuna that you are feeling sorry for these people for whom you should not feel sorry. You are lamenting about death, but there was never a time when you were non-existent. Never will there be a time in the future when we will cease to exist. So just because a body withers away, that does not mean that we cease to exist. Why? He says, as there is here in the body for the embodied childhood, youth and old age, so also the passing on to another body. In the same manner, those firm in mind are not thereby bewildered. Deho asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jaram. We in our own lifetime, we can think of the time when we were young children playing around, then youth when we were more serious, then young people, and we can project the future when we will grow old and we will become frail and when we will be approaching our deathbed. We will pass through different stages of our own life. Similarly, the end of death, we will pass on to another body. That is what is the wise person's knowledge. The wise person knows that this life is only one of a series, just like a book can have many chapters. And each chapter, at the end of one chapter, the next chapter will begin. Similarly, we have many lifetimes, and what we have accomplished in one lifetime, that is carried forward and we carry on into the next lifetime. So he says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya sitoshnu sukha dukkhadaha agamapayano anityas tam stitikshasva bharata. This is momentary sense contacts on the other hand. Now this is on one side, we have the eternal self, which is transmigrating, which is going beyond the body. On the other side, we have this transitory world, where we say momentary sense contacts, on the other hand, O Kaunteya, yield, cold, warmth, joy, pain, alternately coming and going, are transitory. Do endure them. With the help of our senses, we experience heat and cold, joy and pain. These come and go alternatively. If we compare the last few months of our life, we will see how many days we had discomfort, how many days we had comfort, how many days we had happiness, how many days we found pain coming to us just by the environmental contacts through the senses, the five senses that are in contact with the outside world. But they come and go, they are transitory, so we should endure them. Tam stitikshasva bharatva. Titiksha means endurance, the ability to endure without complaining. That is titiksha. That man indeed of firm mind who is unaffected by these, O best of men, equal-minded in joy as well as pain, he is destined for immortality. So we have the qualification necessary. A person who is able to balance himself or keep himself equal-minded in joy as well as in pain, such a person is destined for immortality. Sama dukkha sukham saha amritatvaya kalpate. Amritam. Amritam is death. Amritam means immortality. So this is the first requirement, the most easiest requirement and the most fundamental starting point where we start equalizing the pairs of opposites. When we equalize the pairs of opposites, we start arriving at a neutral center. And we say that neutral center is going to be our progress towards the immortal. What is unreal cannot have being and non-being cannot be real. The conclusion in regard to both has been known to philosophers. After all, the unreal cannot have being. When we critically examine ourselves, only our being, the inner essence of us, that is the real. And what is transitory, what is passing by, how can that be real? When we look at our day-to-day life, every day we go through so many different events happening in the course of the day. Are they real or are they unreal? They're temporarily real. For a short while we experience it and then it changes. Something else comes into our field of attention and we become occupied with something else for a while. Then that goes away and something else comes before us. So in this way, the unreal is presenting itself to us as transitory phases, constantly transforming and changing. So that is essentially unreal. It has transactional validity. It is real in the transactional sense, where we are transacting in the world. We can't deny its reality there, but in its essence, it has no reality because it is transforming, changing. Know that to be indestructible, by which all this is pervaded. None can bring about the destruction of this which knows no decrease. Avinashitu tad vidhi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasham avyayasya asya na kaschit kartum arhati. There is something called pervading. Something is pervading all this change. That is indestructible. When you say pervading, it means it is in the middle, it is in the center, it is through and through, going through and through. Supposing we take a cloth and we soak it in water, then that water is pervading all of the cloth. Any part of the cloth you touch will be wet with water. So water has gone into the whole cloth. We say that is pervaded the whole cloth. Similarly, the spirit, the indestructible, has pervaded everything. It is in us, it is in the material objects, in everything. But it is so subtle, it is so fine, it is so minute that it cannot be seen. It cannot be smelt, it cannot be heard, it cannot be grasped by any of the senses. Even the mind cannot know it. Only by an intuition, by disciplining, we come to experience it and understand the nature of that which is pervading everything. And that is real knowledge. The knowledge that we have of the transforming world, that is relative knowledge. That is changing knowledge. What we say generation gap. When we say parents cannot relate with their children very well. Why? Because the knowledge the parents had now is not of any use to the younger people. They have got a new way of understanding, new knowledge, new words, new approach. So that is change, transformation has taken place. So that is relative knowledge, knowledge of outside things which is constantly changing. But if everybody were to know the knowledge of this which is pervading everything, which is eternal, that knowledge is not different. Whether we were 10,000 years ago, or whether it is in the present, or whether it is 2,000 years in the future, that knowledge of the essential will always remain the same. That is true knowledge. That is knowledge which is going to abide. That is indestructible, knowledge of the indestructible. So when we begin to understand the nature of indestructible things, then we also become identified with it. This is not like devotion to God, where you are worshipping God with the expectation that you will please God, God will become happy with you and He'll give you, bestow your wishes. That is a different system. Here we have to understand the essence. We have to understand the nature of the spirit. And that understanding is going to save us. That awareness of essence becomes our everything. It leads us, it guides us always. Once we know that, all fear goes away and all delusion goes away, all false knowledge goes away. We begin to see things as they really are. These bodies, however, of the everlasting, indestructible and undefinable embodied one are spoken of as having an end. Therefore, go on with the battle, O Bharata. These bodies, however, of the everlasting, indestructible and undefinable embodied one. So when we talk of this all-pervading spirit, self, it has to be known as anashinaha. Nasha means that which can become destroyed, nash. Anashinaha means that which can never be destroyed. Aprameyasya, undefinable. When you say you can define something, it means you have made an idea, a concept about it. But this, it's not possible to make a concept about it, so you say undefinable. And nityasya, nitya means everlasting. Anitya means that which is transitory, which is perishing, which can last for a period of time. But nitya is something which will last forever. So the spirit in us, the embodied, is indestructible. The body is destructible. And having known this, continue with the battle, O Bharata. He who thinks of this as the killer, and he who thinks of this as killed, both these know not. This does not kill, is not killed. Arjuna's first conflict was, that's the first answer to his first question, that should I kill? It is not right to kill these gurus, these great people worthy of worship. I should not kill them. So he says, this is not real knowledge. Your knowledge is not perfect, because if you think you are the killer and you are the killed, he has killed, that is not right, because this does not kill, it is not killed. The Atman does not do any action. Atman is beyond, it's untainted. It is like a pure slate on which you can write everything. It's like a pure stuff which is ever indestructible. It's like this light that is shining above. It is not affected by anything that we do. In the light we can do many things. Without the light we cannot do anything. We will be in darkness. So in the light we can read the Gita, we can read a novel, we can read a story, we can talk, we can carry out some action, we can cook, we can do our work. All these things are happening only because of the light. But the light is not affected by what we do. The light remains pure light. Similarly, the Atman in us is shining and giving us this awareness, our thoughts, our intelligence, everything is coming from the Atman. And with the help of that we can conduct our life. But that does not affect the Atman. It does not taint the Atman. No matter what you do, the Atman is not affected. It is like a pure spirit and the medium that is reflecting it. The Atman is a pure spirit, but the body that we have, mind-body complex, is a medium. And that medium can reflect the spirit. If the medium is good, then it reflects the spirit in clarity. If the medium is imperfect, then the spirit gets distorted. And if the medium is dull, then the spirit cannot shine through. So all the yoga that we do, the disciplining that we are doing, sadhana that we are doing, is to make the medium more and more perfect, clear, pure. When the medium becomes pure, the spirit shines through. Spirit is always there in its glory, unchanging glory. It does not age, it does not get tainted, it does not get polluted, it does not get spoiled, it does not get destroyed. Nothing. It is eternal, indestructible, everlasting. But the medium which we call our body as an instrument or a medium through which that spirit must shine, that can undergo deterioration. This is neither born nor does this die, nor having once come into being cease to become any more. Unborn, perpetual, eternal is this ancient one. It is not killed on the killing of the body. This is a famous na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nityah shashvato ayam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. This is the first differentiation that we have to make between what is Atma and what is Anatma, what is self and what is non-self, what is eternal and what is transient. That is why we say this is Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga. We're using our reasoning, the faculty of our reasoning. We should be able to distinguish these two categories by clearly distinguishing which part of us is the transient aspect, which part of us is an eternal aspect, which part of us is destructible, or which part of us is immutable, unchanging, which part of us is part of nature, which part of us is part of the eternal spirit. About him who knows this as the indestructible, the everlasting, the unborn, never decreasing one, of such a person how could the question arise, whose death he causes, whom he kills, O Partha. Once this wisdom arises in a person, the person will not have this kind of questions arise, like whose death he causes, whom he kills, etc. Does it mean that we can excuse a person from committing a crime, murder, and say, after all, what does it matter? The Atman is indestructible. Not exactly in that context, because here we have to think that this is a battlefield and both the parties are fighting. There is a question of dharma. They are fighting for the upholding of dharma, the upholding of righteousness, because the Kauravas were not playing fair. They were engaging in unrighteous conduct and they had to be corrected. They had righteousness must prevail. The king must be righteous. And so it's a fratricidal war between kings, princes, to restore righteousness. So in that context, the question of killing become irrelevant because the greater picture is dharma. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. This is also a famous sloka which many people learn by heart. Navani grihnati naro aparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Just as a man casts off his worn-out garments, assumes other that are new, likewise, casting off bodies that are worn out, the embodied one takes to others that are new. This is also a symbolic representation of how the spirit, continuing its sojourn, has the same situation as casting off old clothes. Just like you cast off an old cloth without giving it much thought, knowing that it is time for you to get a new, fresh clothes. The old ones have served their purpose and now have to be discarded because they are worn out. Similarly, the body too will one day be cast aside because it is worn out and it has served its purpose. So Shankara says, Deha Vasana, one of the big problems of human beings is identification with the body. We identify ourselves too much with the body. And one of the early acts of realization or practicing meditation and yoga is suddenly one day you begin to realize you see yourself as detached from the body. You are not the body. You see the body only as an instrument, as a dwelling place, as a home, as an abode, as a vehicle, which must be maintained, which should be taken care of, just like we take care of everything else. But we don't identify with it. We are not the body. And Shankaracharya says, Mano buddhya ahankara chittani naham, na cha srotra jihve, na cha ghrana netre, na cha vyoma bhumir, na tejo na apo, chidananda rupaha shivoham, shivoham. Chidananda rup, consciousness, chit ananda, bliss. That is my true nature. My true nature is consciousness, not this body, not these senses, not this mind. These are all part of nature, part of the medium that we spoke of, the instrument. The error of avidya comes in. Error means the ignorance of non-knowledge comes in when we identify with the body. Since we are young, we are given a strong sense of identification with the body. And it becomes stronger, especially modern culture with cosmetics and fashion and so many other forms. Slowly you find it is strengthened, this identification with the body. And this can cause a lot of difficulties at later, mature ages. But if we are wise and we critically examine and we think, we realize that the real self, the life in us is something separate. It's not part of this body. This body is like a garment that we have, and this will one day be cast aside when it is worn out, when it has served its purpose. Ruthlessly, mercilessly, it will be cast aside. Every day we see the roses blooming. They last for 3-4 days. How beautiful they look. How lovely. We all admire the roses. But what happens after 5 days? They all fall to the ground. The petals drop. We don't even care about it. It just happens. They are shed. They fall. And they have served their purpose. But in its place, new buds have come. And new flowers come. Similarly, the body too, after 70, 80 years, it will also be shed. It has to be shed. It has served its purpose. That is a law, natural law. There is no sentiment there. Law of nature functions. Similarly, here too, he says, like the worn out garment. And what is the nature of the spirit? The spirit itself is so subtle. It is so fine. It is so minute that weapons do not cut it. Fire does not burn this. Water does not wet this. Wind does not dry this. Indeed, it is uncleavable, it is non-inflammable, it is unwettable, non-dryable also, everlasting, all-pervading, stable, immobile, it is eternal. See, when the Christians argue that after death you will go to hell and you will burn in hell, the question arises, after death there is no nervous system. So how will you experience the sensation of burning? Can you experience the sensation of... You cannot experience the sensation of burning. So the question doesn't arise, it's impossible. The self itself has no sensation of this kind. It is bliss through and through, ananda through and through, pure consciousness and pure ananda. When that becomes enmeshed in the body, we experience sensation through the pranas, and we can feel the two opposites, pleasure and pain. If a person becomes too pleasure-seeking, then life becomes painful. You can't bear any pain. And that is why certain hardship is good, certain discomfort is good. It makes you strong, strengthens you. That is at the physical level. And that will also one day deteriorate, and instead when you think of the spirit is indestructible, it is immobile, it is stable, it is eternal, it is all-pervading, it is everywhere. If it is everywhere, it means it is immobile, it does not move. The body moves from place to place, but the spirit need not move. Spirit is everywhere, it's all-pervading. And this is a very interesting question. How does the mind function as a separate entity? These are questions which are answered by the philosophers, the Tattva-jnanis. When they delve into consciousness, they can say how the mind is created as a projection. there is no real thing called mind, but when there is an interaction of the spirit within and the physical forces outside, and we have this creation of something called a mind, which becomes conditioned by pleasure and pain, and that is how we become also adapted to a certain lifestyle because of our pleasure-pain conditioning and the intellectual powers that we get. The intellect gets its powers from the spirit, from the soul, from the self, and it functions. But that is all part of nature, part of the transforming and perishable world. It is undefined, unthinkable. It is non-subject to change. It is spoken of. Therefore, knowing it as such, there is no reason for you to feel sorry for it. Or again, if you should hold this to be constantly ever born or constantly ever dying, even then, O mighty armed, you have no reason to regret it. In respect of anything born, death is certain, and certain is birth likewise for anything dead. Therefore, regarding something inevitable, you have no reason to feel any regret. So there is the constant nature of the self. If you are unable to think of the constant nature of the self, then you have to agree that every beginning must come to an end, and every end is a new beginning. In life too, many things come to an end, but that end is only a new beginning. Something else begins. And therefore even death is not an end, it's only a new beginning. Is death a death? It is real life. Many people say life after life. So death is a gateway to the next life. So it is not an end at all, it is a beginning. So this beginning and end cycle continues always. That is another principle. So therefore you should not regret. When you think of somebody even dying, that is certain that something that is dead will be born again. And anything that has a beginning must come to an end. It is the self, that spirit, when we say beginningless, that means it has no end because it has no beginning. That is how it becomes eternal. Anything else, even up to the world of Brahma, up to this world of this cosmos that we see, this big universe that we see, because it had a beginning, it will one day have an end. But the self we are speaking of, that had no beginning. Therefore, it is endless, eternal. So in respect of anyone born, death is certain, and certain is birth likewise for anyone dead. Therefore, regarding something as inevitable, you have no reason to feel any regret. Beings have unmanifested origin and manifested middle states, O Bharata, and again unmanifested terminations. Where is room for plaint herein? Here is another great truth when we say origins are all unmanifested. We do not know how things began. We do not know how things end. We only know the middle. We know what happens in between. Searching, people are trying to find the origins. This is always obscure, not very clear. We speculate about what will happen in the end, but we will not be able to know. It is only this middle area, middle part of manifestation that we know. Like we said, the Sankhya, and the next part of this chapter will go into yoga, the disciplining part of yoga. This part is like theoretical, a theoretical way of understanding. And then how do we practice? How do we practice yoga in our day-to-day lives, that we also may attain immortality, that we may also transcend this dualism and be free from the influence of the transitory world, which is the cause of misery. If people are miserable anywhere, it is because they are in some way related with the transient, with the anitya, with the non-eternal. If you are attached with the non-eternal, you will have problems. And salvation lies in understanding the nature of the eternal self, the true higher self. And by understanding the nature of the higher self, we become what we understand. We become what we know. And we gain access to that world by understanding it. And when we understand it, we realize the eternal teachings. And that absolves us from all the vicissitudes of the phenomenal world. The phenomenal world is full of vicissitudes, ups and downs, and conflicts and opposites. We always find opposites are interposed one against the other. And these opposites are the cause of dualism, cause of the conflict human beings experience, the psychological pain or the problems that human beings face. And by resolving them, when we go into the essence or the unity or the eternal, we are able to detach ourselves from the conflicts, not escape. We can still deal with them, but our standpoint is on the eternal. By fixing ourselves on the eternal, we are able to deal with the transient. That gives us a firm ground to stand on, and we have an eternal foot plank or foothold from which we can operate, from which we can function. And that makes a difference in the quality of our life. It has the touch of wisdom, which an unenlightened person will not have. An unenlightened person's life could go up and down with the changing phenomena. And it may be bearable for a while, but after a while it becomes tedium. It brings weariness and frailty. So that we escape from when we go into the eternal teachings, where we say Chidananda comes, peace comes. Peace of mind is attained by realizing the immortal self.